been a lot of conversation on social media in the last few days about Diwali, this Hindu festival of lights, which supposedly celebrates the triumph of light over darkness, but also offers worship to goddesses like Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, and is a genuinely religious Hindu festival. Many American politicians and indeed politicians from across the world have offered celebration of Diwali, with the famous president of the United States lighting the candle ritually in the Oval Office and joining in that celebration. So here's a question. Can Christians join in religious ceremonies, or can they join in the goodwill of the pagans? Or is this offering worship to demons? Well, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 20 through 21, St. Paul writes, "No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of the demons too. You cannot partake in the table of the Lord and the table of the demons too." On the other hand, in Nostra Aetate and in other places, we do get this teaching from the church that there's a ray of truth in non-Christian religions, and that there is sort of this virtuous pagan. So what gives? How do we resolve this tension? Well, St. Thomas Aquinas has some commentary on it. In the second part of the second part, question 94, article 4, he writes that even ignorant or erroneous participation in idolatry is objectively sinful. That when we participate in non-Christian rituals, religious rituals, we are either explicitly or implicitly, that is, we are explicitly invoking demons and spirits, or we're implicitly just involving ourselves in the rituals, we are, he says, making a compact with demons. We are engaging in acts that render worship or reverence to something that is not God, even if this is not explicit. So on Diwali, it definitely has a religious aspect to it. It is a purely religious ritual. And on top of that, celebration of a non-Christian ritual by a Christian or by someone who professes to be a Christian causes scandal. And the publicity around this has not been good. In fact, it's caused a lot of division, even among people who normally would support all these politicians. What about that image of the virtuous pagan, though? Well, the Catechism of the Catholic Church says the Church does recognize in other religions that search among shadows and images for the God who is yet unknown, yet near, since he gives existence and life and all things to men. You think of people like Plato and Aristotle and Ovid, pagans who reasoned their way to an awful lot of truth. Well, man was made for the truth, and he does seek it, and he sometimes finds parts of it. Indeed, St. Thomas writes that one who does by nature what the law requires, that's a quotation of Romans chapter 2, lives according to natural law and right reason, even when he doesn't know the Lord, even when he's not explicitly a Christian. So can you find wisdom in Hinduism and Buddhism, and even in forms of atheistic humanism? You might stumble upon something that is quite virtuous. There could be a virtuous pagan, but that virtue would not be directed towards its proper end, which is the service and enjoyment of Jesus Christ. So you think of someone like Tolkien, and he has this sort of like resonance in The Lord of the Rings. It's not a Catholic text in the sense that it's like trying to be Catholic and Gandalf is Jesus and all that, but it does have sort of harmonies. It does align with true themes in the Christian faith, and it teaches those truths imaginatively. You think of figures like Tom Bombadil, who is a naturalist figure, as like that's what Tolkien himself calls him in his 144th letter. He calls him an ageless naturalist figure. So what he really is, and he's older than the hills, right? He's got this timelessness to him. He also delights in the harmony of creation, right? He sings to the trees. Singing is an act of order, right? And the trees are compelled to obey when they are acting out of order. He is detached from power, like he's not affected by the One Ring, so he's not tempted with the sin, with this like temptation to power. He kind of mirrors what Aquinas is talking about, one who lives according to natural law and right reason. On the other hand, although he's got all these beautiful qualities, he is passive. He doesn't engage in the war against Sauron. He sort of sits out. He's got a neutrality to him. And so while he is admirable and he's got no obvious flaws in the story, he does not participate with that kind of virtuous activity that you would think a saint in real life participates in the plan of God, right? And he doesn't war against Sauron as the saints war against the devil, as they represent genuine opposition to him. So you've got other figures too, like the elves who possess this natural virtue. They have these, like, they're described in celestial ways. So they don't have any obvious flaws, perhaps, but they're sort of like that virtuous pagan, that one who has sort of like a nature worship involved in them, right? So anyway, that tension between the virtuous pagan and that dividing line is right there at religious celebration. It's right there at worship and veneration. If we involve ourselves in any way, rendering worship and reverence to something that is not God, that is idolatry. And not just idolatry that sends harmless worship out into the universe, but the worship, the compact with the demonic realm. It's not harmless. It's not good.